Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to another in a series of fascinating webinars on the Israeli environmental scene, hereby sponsored by ASPN, Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, and together with our affiliates around the world, most prominently Nature Israel in the United States. Their new chairman, Jonathan Silverstein of Austin, Texas, will be with us today. Excited to have all of you with us. Jonathan will be talking to us about a really incredible and I would say very compelling transformation that Nature Israel is undergoing under his leadership in the last couple of years. Looking forward to that. Meanwhile, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you all for your time. Oh, hello, Miroslav in Belgrade. And please let us know where you're tuning in from. Always happy to see your greetings. Feel very blessed to be connected to all of you around the world, taking your time out of busy days to join us and learn about Nature Israel, and particularly today to learn how you can get involved. We're, hello Maggie and Leon, our former board chair from New Jersey, and Leon is really the reason Jonathan is with us today, but maybe we'll get to that afterwards. Jonathan will introduce himself and we'll ask him questions. Hi, Ira, a new board member in Baltimore area. And hello from Emerald City, Seattle, Mark. New York City, Lawrence. Oh, Lawrence is home with COVID. Hope you're feeling okay there, Lawrence. Anyway, we appreciate all the work, the volunteers, our board members in all around the States now. You'll learn in Canada, mostly Toronto based, in the UK and in France. We're thinking of reaching out to other places in the world as well. And of course, we have projects going on with other countries in the Mediterranean basin, and inshallah, with Jordan in the near future. Nothing to report yet, but we're working on a joint wetland rehabilitation project with Jordan. Many of you have heard about our Startup Nature project, rewilding Israel's former wetlands. Thank you all for your comments and greetings. Jonathan will be taking questions after his talk, and I'll be fielding them. You can write them in the question and answer feature, or if you write them in the chat, we'll try to keep up. David Amichai is our back office today, filling in for our usual Avi Sadiv, the executive director of Canadian CSPNI in Toronto. David is on our staff at Resource Development, our digital wizard and digital communications guy from his home in Jerusalem. We are a couple minutes from getting underway, letting people join. People are still joining. We're upwards of 60 people now. And I don't know, are we live on Facebook yet, David?
I'm checking, hold on.
Getting us live on Facebook. There's always some people joining. If you're on Facebook, well, I'll wait till I can see that we're there. But please, if you know people who want to join these webinars, you can forward our mail to them, the mails you receive. We always update you a week in advance about the upcoming webinar, or at least a week in advance, and then we give you a notice a couple days in advance and 3 hours in advance. Any of those emails you could forward to somebody who could register, get on our mailing list. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate your support. Yeah, coming off a tough week in Israel. You all have probably heard the government fell. Geez, I don't know if today is the vote. Tomorrow's the vote to officially disband the Knesset. We're pretty sure it's going to happen, but it might be delayed slightly, and various tricks of either side. But basically, we're looking at elections in the late fall. November 1st is looking like the consensus date. Not sure yet, though. And it's going to be yet another unstable time. This is our 5th election in 3.5 years. Not a good record for democracy. But the good news this time is that the transition government, and if God forbid there isn't a government formed after the November elections, and we have to be in another election cycle, which will be 3 to 4 months of election before elections, and another 2 to 3 months to form a government. In other words, it could be another year, conceivably before a government is formed. And the good news for the environment is that the current government is locked in, and the Environment Ministry, but also the Transportation Ministry, some degree the Energy Ministry, have made big strides in the environment, relatively big strides in a relatively short amount of time. Tamar Zandberg, the environmental minister, is, like we said, in her job for another 5-6 months at least, with a couple of key SPNI people, former SPNI people on her close staff in her bureau. And there's a lot they can do, even in a transition period, just like the president can do without enacting laws. There's regulations that can be enacted and various other government type things that the executive branch can do. So I think we're close. We should probably get moving now. 5 minutes in after the hour, and close to 70 people on board with us here. Thank you all very much from around the world. It is with great, great pleasure that I introduce Jonathan Silverstein. Jonathan is a businessman in Austin, Texas. He's been involved in ASPNI since 2018. I've had the pleasure of meeting Jonathan in his home and in his home office, a very funky home office not a home office, but it is a home in an office, but it's not his home. Whatever, that's a whole story. It's behind him on his Zoom tonight. And in Israel, of course, where he comes every year when there isn't a pandemic. It's a pleasure working with him. And most importantly, Jonathan has really, in the year and a half or so, he's been a couple of years that he's been very involved in moving the board forward. In the last half a year that he's been chairman, there's really have been extremely interesting, positive, and compelling changes that have gone on in ASPN, now called Nature Israel. And he's here to talk a little bit about that history and the transition, and especially the incredible activities and processes that are going on in Nature Israel right now. So thanks everybody for being here, and thank you, Jonathan.
Jay and David, thank you for having me, and all the people that are on the webinar today. I'm extremely honored to be amongst those that have attended or been speakers on these series, namely like Yossi Abramowitz and Tamar Zandberg and Lon Tal. And it's just, there is, it goes with a lot of appreciation and gratefulness that I'm here today. So thank you for having me, Jay. I think the goal today was really to understand more about what we were formerly called ASPNI, the American Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. And in 2015, it was renamed as a short handle as just Nature Israel. I joined in 2018, and you'll hear a little bit more about my experience and how I got on to the board and sort of my role. But it was clear to me that the bulk of both historically and current board members were amazing, incredible people that have given so much to both Israel in general and specifically to this nonprofit. The area that I think was really needed, two areas. One, just geographically to get greater representation around the US, to boost our awareness and representation, as I said, but also that it seemed like there was an opportunity for someone who is more operationally experienced in business to bring some of that and media, digital first knowledge, and sort of those strengths of mine, potentially just given my business experience, applied very well to areas where we could boost. So I'm going to take you through just some slides. I have about 17 slides total to give you a taste of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. So I'm just going to grab the screen share now. Can everybody see it? Title slide. David, is that okay?
Yeah. Okay,
great. So these are the topics that I really wanted to focus on because while SPNI as an organization, I fell in love with doing amazing things. And if you've been attending these webinars, you're getting a heavy dose of what we do or what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. But I'm really overwhelmed a little bit to be the chairperson of this board that was founded by some really impressive people. So I'll share with you some highlights of the people that committed their lives to environmentalism and were the original founders. We'll talk a little bit about some key areas that I may or may not have been covered in past webinars, just very topically, the general areas that SBNI is both directly involved with and because of their status as the leading NGO in Israel, member-based NGO, all the activities that they fight for and defend and protect around nature. I'll share a little bit more about me, just if anybody really cares to know who is now in a position to help SBNI at an active level. We'll talk about some research and positioning. As Jay said, I joined in 2018, and for me, I really wanted to understand really the asset, the strengths, the weaknesses, the SWOT analysis for those marketers out there, to know what we were really good at, what we had some vulnerabilities. So we'll go through just a couple of those, give you a taste. And if you're seeing our ads on Facebook, if you're bearing witness to content that we're sharing in the quarterly newsletter, you can see that we're infusing this repositioning. And then talk a little bit about what we've done since 2020, 2022 as a board. It's been a fundamental change in activation around board members and specific areas that we needed to focus in. And then where we're going, Nature Israel tours, we'll talk a little bit about that. Just take a step here. So wonderfully, I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. There's 4 that I'm going to highlight that are actually on the incorporation documents back in 1986. So while SBNI has been around since 1953, and next year will be a 70th year, we're coming up on 7 years. So this is not a startup. This is not a fly-by-night. This is a well-established, high integrity, and high committed group. Dan Singer, most of these guys came out of DC, but Dan Singer, he's one of them. Went to Swarthmore and graduated in 51 and Yale Law School in 54. Fried Frank, he's been a partner there since 65, but believe he started there in the late 50s. He's counseled a wide range of real estate, corporate partnership, financing businesses, and helped set up organizational and operational efforts for nonprofits, a man after my own heart. He's with the American Arbitration Association. He's been an arbitrator since 1984. He's still in DC. I've reached out to him a few times. I only hear amazing things about Dan, and I look forward to spending more time with him. The guys are really, he's also U.S. District Court mediator since '89. For those that know, Rafe Pomerantz graduated from Cornell in '68, the year I was born. Widely respected American environmentalist. He was the operating chief, for those that know, Friends of the Earth, from 80 to 84, so just a few years before Nature Israel was created. He's a senior associate at the World Resources Institute from 86 to 93. Most impressively, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Environment and Development under Clinton in 93. He founded Climate Policy Center in 1999, and the chairman of Arctic 21, which he's most well known around his environmental work that he's done on the Arctic poles, Antarctica, and really many things that were going on that he identified that the hole in the ozone, one of the leaders there. Today he's a consultant for Rethink Energy Florida and National Academy Polar Research Board, but he's an impressive special man. Same with Brent Blackwelder, this guy, another guy after my own heart, Duke 1964 graduate. He graduated with mathematics from Yale with a master's, and he has a PhD in philosophy from Maryland. He spent his entire career focused, and continues his entire career focused on serving the public and making our communities and planet better places to live. He's testified over 100 times in front of the US Congress. He founded American Rivers, helped expand the National Wild and Scenic Rivers system. And he basically pulled them from over 30x, meaning from 1973 to today, there's no more than 250 scenic rivers that have been identified by him. or preserved. He was the president of Friends of the Earth, so he and Rafe have a commonality there. He was there from 94 to 2009 as the president. And in 2004, Vanity Fair named him the Steward of the Planet. He's past board of director chair of the League of Conservation Voters, and he helped eliminate more than 200 dams and stream dredging projects, which would have destroyed rivers, wetlands, and wildlife. There's a theme that, as you've heard about, Startup Nature, that continues to be a central focus of SBNI and ASPNI to protect wetlands and wildlife as a critical element in our fight against climate change. Henry Diamond, unfortunately, he passed in 2016, but as a Vanderbilt graduate, he was the outstanding undergraduate. He went to Georgetown Law. Under Nelson Rockefeller's brother, Lawrence, he worked with the Outdoor Resources Review Commission. He set the foundation for the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the National System of Rivers and Trails, and the Wilderness Act. And in 2004, it was a big year for our guys, he received the Puglia Medal. Nelson Rockefeller, then I believe the governor of New York, appointed him the Department of Environmental Conservation's first commissioner on the first Earth Day in 1970. And the DEC addressed issues of mercury pollution, water and air pollution, public land, and forest access, establishing the model for other states. He was well known for really protecting the areas of the Adirondack. So that's a little taste of our founders, and truly we stand on the shoulders of giants. Some notable support to SBNI through the 36 years. First, the Nillian David Jerusalem Bird Observatory. This was established in 1994. One of our long-term and fabulous board members, Daniel Nyman, is a significant advocate for this program and is personally made, when she goes to Israel, visits Amir and the team there. It was founded by the naturalist Amir Baliban and the ornithologist Gidon Perlman. And it's noted as Israel's first urban wildlife site, which I think is significant. And it serves as the National Bird Banding Center. And over 50,000 visitors came in 2016 alone. But I know that's only grown since. The Levi Eshkol Museum and Environmental Hub, tip of the cap to Leon Sokol, who's on the call today. There's more connection between Leon and myself, but Leon was co-chair with Russell Rothman during this time that restored the private residence of once David Ben-Gurion, Levi, and Golda Meir had lived in this house to honor the legacy of Levi, an outspoken champion of environmental issues and urban planning. It opened in December 2017 after renovations and serves as both a museum and honoring Levi, but also SBNI's Jerusalem headquarters. The Gazelle Valley, Jerusalem, formerly known as Prihar Valley, this another area that SBNI, both it was their concept and it's their active duty to maintain and advance. Work began in January, early 2013. It's Israel's first urban nature reserve. So a couple of nice firsts. It's become one of the best and most accessible places to see various wildlife in their natural behavior in an urban setting. Several endangered species other than gazelles live in the Gazelle Valley as a result of the opening of a small pond in the middle of the valley, living roofs, and there's just everywhere you step and turn, there's another example of brilliance of nature protection. For those that also know, SBNI maintains 11 critical field schools. They are strewn across every corner of Israel. SBNI serves as the critical authority for education, conservation, and research. Field schools are an integral part of SBNI's operations, a focal area for local eco-activities, and play a leading role in Israeli environmental, ecotourism, and education. Those of you that have visited Israel, hopefully you have visited one of or more of these field schools. If you have not, we look forward to hosting you the next time you are in Israel. These are key for education to ensure every Israeli and those that visit to understand the efforts that SBNI is doing on a local basis. There's also natural and human-induced environmental disasters that SBNI not happily, but as a requirement do take on to bring both awareness of the issues that are going on. For example, oil spill that happened about a year and a half. SPNI jumped right into the fray and got to cleaning up immediately, was big in providing insights and understanding around the Jerusalem Hills fire. As you've heard in the past, Jay is a big, he fights the good fight here, and we have all taken it on as well. Right tree, right place. Just planting trees just anywhere is not helping. The avian flu that hit just in this last December, SPNI has played a big role in both identifying the root causes and trying to find more solutions. Griffin vulture preservation, as you know, there was a poisoning going on, really to try and reduce it from a pesticide standpoint, but it's having significant negative impact to the Griffin vulture population. Pro-environmental lobbying, and you've heard many of these other things before, but these are the roles that SPNI must stick to and defend. So that's a little bit about the notable support to SPNI for those that didn't know. Real quick, I'll just give you a little bit who I am. I was born and raised in Teaneck, New Jersey, though I live in Austin, Texas for the past 20 years. I went to school and graduated in 1990 from the University of Colorado. Go Buffs. When I graduated, I started out on Wall Street. I was working in custody and the buy side, Chase Bank, Alliance Capital, I believe it's called now Alliance Bernstein. And I left just before Kidder folded at bed. Not a great experience there, and it made me switch my my career path. I had my MBA in marketing in 1996. I then spent the next 17 years working in advertising, Bozell Worldwide, Low and Partners, Scallon McCabe Sloves, J. Walter Thompson. If you're familiar with Donnie Deutsch, I worked with Donnie for 3 years and his team. And I spent 8 years here in Austin with GSD&M. In 2011, I launched with 2 other partners, Greatest Common Factory. I sold in 2015. I then became the Chief Operating Officer and head of all digital media businesses for Media General. It was acquired in 2016 by Nexstar. I spent another year there. And then in 2017, I started a company called Mobile First. And that's been going on for about 5 years. This is in the world of e-commerce, analytics, conversion rate optimization, a lot of data. So that's a little bit about me. As far as boards, I sit on the Curve Interactive board, a music technology company called Jamfeed. I support a venture capital group out of Santa Barbara, a marketing and technology communications firm, K Squared, which is run by the former CNN weekend host, George Howell. And in, actually, this should say 2018, apologies. I joined the board at the request and encouragement of Leon Sokol, given I was spending time in Israel every year. Leon I've known since I was about 2 years old. So it's a long time. Our families are good friends. And when Leon started telling me about ASPNI, I had to join. A little bit about me, my wife, Jill. We've been married 22 years. Our daughters, Brooke and Carly, both are, one is about to be a senior in college and the other is about to be a freshman in college. So all we're left with is our kitty cat, Bailey. Okay, so getting now into where we are, or really from 2018 forward, I think there was great energy around the idea of let's figuring out really who we are or who we could be. So we set out on a path. I set up the first committee, arguably, committee structure of just setting up a marketing committee, and anybody in the organization that wanted to join me in this quest. And fortunately, I wasn't left alone. Many people joined, which was terrific. And we set on a path to really figure out who we are and what we really could and should be doing in the US to help SPNI in every way possible. We went through this. There's many different ways to reposition or to understand the value of your organization. This isn't about taglines. This is about purpose. Anybody who's listen to Simon Sinek or Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great or Built to Last. These are the seminal elements to understanding why you're in business beyond making money. What is your purpose? So we went through the determining our positioning, developed our strategy, we built the plans, and now we're in the activation of those plans and measuring performance as we grow. We'll get into this a little bit more. In summer of 2019, some of you on this call may have received a survey asking your opinions. It's about 10 questions. I'm only going to go over about 3 of them, which I think are most telling, that helped direct where we are going. The first question is, what best describes your motivation to give to our cause? And several options were given. The way this is presented, those in green really are above the norm or index higher. And those answered in the red didn't get as much love, let's say. So the ones in green, I want to protect Israel's animals and bird life. I care deeply about the future of the land of Israel and the Jewish people. I want to create a greener Israel for future generations. And I want to support Israeli innovation in solar energy and other green technologies. So the takeaway really for us was that technology, innovation, animal/bird protection, and a greener Israeli future was really where we should be focusing our messaging, and we have the right to be speaking from that perch. Those in the past where we're talking about, Tikkun Olam or repairing the world, which is more of a general, which is great for diasporatic Jews and those that care about Israel, these are wonderful things, but we need to be more single-minded and speak what our best strengths are. Whether we have family in Israel or we've taken a trip with SPNI, that the real reasons why they give is because of what we do and what we can do. Next question was, which SPNI efforts do you personally care about most? These are a little different. And what we found out is SPNI's participation in all levels of governmental planning bodies to provide sustainable environmental alternatives to development plans was far and away the highest. So this is what our constituency, our donors, our quote unquote members, those that give annually or regularly, care about this most. Doesn't mean the others are not important. They just have to be taken in context. But creation and expansion of habitat for millions of birds migrating. So this is a direct example or result of our heritage of the Hula Valley and rewilding that area now into startup nature, and the rest. But the main takeaway, just for time, is our influential position within Israeli policymaking and leadership in active environmental protection are our top strengths. So that's really where we need to be focusing our messaging. The last question, at least of these 3, is in which areas do you feel SPNI can improve the most? And what came out pretty obvious is we need to raise more global awareness of threats we've solved to Israel's ecology that should be adopted around the globe, and publicize and expand SPNI's record of coexistence and neighbor sharing a common interest in the environment. And hopefully through these webinars, which started roughly about shortly after COVID started, which was really in timing, was fostered and in some way inspired by these results that were shared in mid-2019. So not taking all credit at all, it was just a real good collaborative work between our teams here in the US and with Jay's team in Israel. So the significant opportunity to focus in the key areas are promote threats we solve or have solved, focus new messaging around coexistence solutions, and be the outspoken voice of Israel environmental policy that impacts the future of the Israeli people. That's where we're spending our time. One thing from an operational standpoint, it's important to say, for a long time, the operational budget of how ASPNI, or now Nature Israel, worked was very contingent on donations that were coming in. But we felt like we were benefiting from a few wonderful beneficiaries, folks that had put SPNI in its will, created, I wouldn't say technically an endowment, but it set aside enough funds for us to be able to get up our game, as people would say. So we went really out of a lot of analog into onesie twosie people working on things to a really well-oiled digital and technology and communication structure value chain. So donations that come in are recognized through technology and QuickBooks and accounting. It's integrated with what we call a customer relationship management tool called Salesforce, for those of you that are familiar. And that is connected both in email marketing, MailChimp, it's not featured here, but also with our social media strategies and optimization to where communication in the US and Canada, our friends, we're able to refine and hone our messaging. And then since we have added some more professional expertise, partnerships, Mutino and Chan is now our public accountants to just, again, help us make the most out of the dollars that are coming in and efficiently and effectively creating reporting allow us to make smarter decisions about the money that's coming in for efforts for SPNI. CloudX is a partner of ours to help us make the most out of Salesforce. By the way, as a nonprofit, you can have an account at Salesforce for free, which is really wonderful. And the newest relationship, Lawrence Kimmel is on the call, and unfortunately he's hurting right now with COVID, but in January, he and his partner, Howard Levy, became our agency of record, and a lot of the marketing communication that you see is coming from them or at the hands of their experts there, and we really appreciate it. They're unique in the way they support organizations like Nature Israel that's a nonprofit set up to support an organization in Israel. So they have our utmost support and fondness and appreciation. We also internally just have been moving to a swifter technology suite, Google Workspace, also free for nonprofits. So mail, calendar, cloud-based Drive, allowing all our documents to be in one place, easier to share, easier to edit, and to work collaboratively. And Zoom obviously is now universally accepted. When I first came in, I was using it since 17, and a lot of people weren't familiar. But when the pandemic hit, boy, we sure were ready. A little bit about our board. I mentioned earlier that in 2018, Leon and Russell were on a quest to expand, and this is even before Zoom. So the fact that we were able to make headway on this to get really, really phenomenal people, 3 in the Southwest alone: Dan Pava, who's out of Santa Fe, Paul Citron out of Albuquerque, and Rebecca Smith out of LA. They've all played amazing hands in our messaging and our communication and our developments. Ira May, who's on the call today, is one of our newest out of Baltimore, Maryland, and Rabbi Max Weiss out of Chicago. So those are the newer areas, but given, and Alan Shanzer out of Westport, Connecticut, also one of our newest. The legacy players, Sean Sweeney and Russell Rothman, Lisa Ching, Jonathan Sonis out of Brooklyn, and Danielle Nyman out of Englewood, New Jersey, and of course, Leon Sokol out of Tenafly. We are now looking and will always be eager to find other board members that help us have greater representation across the US, that align with our values and our goals. So we'll get a little bit more about that later. I'm just going to click through a couple of things just to give you a taste of the things we're pretty pleased about and excited about seeing these kind of results. We're into our second year of social media advertising now. For many, it's like, wow, welcome to the late 90s. But you know, we weren't structured this way. So we're glad that we're now here and we're using it effectively. We've learned, hopefully, from many of the mistakes of generations before us. As I mentioned, we transitioned bookkeeping and accounting to Martino and Chan, which used to be handled by one person. We completed conversion of our donor database, as I mentioned, to CRM or to Salesforce. I mentioned Dan Pav and Alan Shanzer joined, and their committee chairs. We'll talk a little bit about that, Ira and Rabbi Weiss. And we transitioned executive leadership from Leon Sokol and Russell Rothman to myself and Sean Sweeney. And that happened just, seems a long time ago, but it was only about nine months ago. We've established 6 formal board committees. We'll talk a little bit about that. We have a new Nature Israel brand logo, as you can see it in the top right. This is in line with SPNI's branding change. So we're continuing to be associated, and it retains both our names from those that know us for the legacy ASPNI and those that are getting more familiar with us at Nature Israel. This was pretty exciting to get someone young that had experience in the world of digital marketing, social natives. Jessica Lewis also happens to be out of Austin, started just after Thanksgiving, but really in earnest January 1st. She's Director of Marketing and Development. She's the first staff hire in 28 years. Shout out to Robin Gordon, who has been with us for who's been with us those 28 years, and she is the Director of Donor Relations. As you may know, launched Startup Nature in the US. Many of you may have met Jay and Dan Alon during their 2 visits recently. And if you're not, you'll see them again soon. One of those things for foundations and those that really check our status on, where we are as a status of compliance. We are at gold status on GuideStar, so we're proud to be representing at a very high level. We mentioned Red Rooster, and a new natureisrael.org website will be launched hopefully before the end of 2022. SPNI just completed their migration of a new website, so we're looking forward to working with David Amakai and the team there to get the US version updated. It's been a hot minute since that's been done. And we're going to talk a little bit about Nature Israel Tours. This is only about another 3 minutes. I mentioned a few times that we have changed the structure of the board, one, because now we can operate effectively remotely with everyone in their geographic region, rather than having to meet in person every quarter, which was more challenging and difficult, especially since we don't want to spend any dollars that should be going towards protecting the environment. But what we did set up is committees led by board members in different areas. So there's an executive committee, there's a development committee, donor relations, marketing, finance, governance, and nominating. And pretty much every board member sits on at least one committee. They don't need to chair, but all do. All chair folks are board members. Not all board members are chair folks. And this is something where it's fundamentally changed the way we operate. We meet executive committee and the chair folks meet every Wednesday. So historically, there was more time between the events, and this enables us to be on top of issues that need to be addressed and worked on and ironed out. So a lot of activity has happened over the last several years to get us current. I won't go into all those details, but I think everyone feels pretty proud of the status of where we are right now in our operating rhythm. So that leads me to this last part, Nature Israel Tours. As I mentioned, my predecessor, at least the board chairs, Russell Rothman and Leon Sokol, there's this history of SPNI and travel and tours. So I'm just going to unveil a couple of paragraphs because I didn't want to speak from the hip on this one. I wanted to get the thoughts out clearly and in a linear fashion. Those familiar with SPNI's history know tourism, day trips, field schools, hikes. Ira May is one of our newest board members, recalled this time when he was in Israel in the early 70s and was taking day trips. It's just very, very connected. Similar to these other organizations such as APAC, JNF, Birthright, and others, one anchor element in all their marketing is creating opportunities to get those in North America and around the world to Israel. If you come to Israel, you'll understand. It's sort of and grow a connection. And the critical component to understanding Israel and nature in Israel should receive no less attention. Now, it's been a while since, while there are mission trips around birding, there has definitely been, since the pandemic, a reduction in this focus. But as we come out of it, we'd like to believe that we're in a slingshot situation where we're now capturing a lot of opportunity, pent up demand and desire to get to Israel, but through a nature lens. However, unlike global Jewry of the past few generations and those that have supported Israel since before 1948, when really Israel's survival was truly precarious. Today, Israel is a global superpower, at least many people perceive Israel as that. So many ask, why should I give? Especially as many on the phone on this webinar from the US are asking, well, we seem to have bigger problems here in the US. Why should I continue to give? And here's why. In Nature Israel, we believe supporting Israel, including ASPN, is an investment in global sustainability. Whether you've read Dan Senor's book, Startup Nation, or not, there's enough data showing that from financial markets, from technology, from if you sat on the Yossi Abramowitz call about the Ashalim power plants, solar power energy plants, the technology that's coming out of Israel is some of the greatest in the world. There was just an article in today's Times of Israel. Thank you to Russell for sending that around, that Italy is looking to Israel for desalination solutions to fix a massively growing problem of drought issues in Italy. The brilliance and ingenuity of those living, working, and inventing every day in Israel are solving problems not just in or for Israel, but critical to coexistence. Starting in 2023, Nature Israel Tours will launch a new series of pre-designed and custom environmentally centered tours, not just those tours of which we directly manage, but those that we celebrate and appreciate. So come visit, experience, learn, and support these major efforts that systematically support nature and critically needed scalable solutions to be adopted, not just by the current or next generation, but for hundreds of those to follow. Come be a larger part of the solution is our invitation. So I'm just going to take you through 3 slides, giving you a taste of what these look like. First, you've heard about Startup Nature. So we're dedicating and probably focusing more on rewilding and wetland tours. ASPN's largest rewilding effort ever. Kfar Rupin is now into its 2nd year. Magan Michael is rewilding now. Be among the first to understand how rewilding is capturing carbon, CO2, creating carbon offsets, restoring nature, and establishing critical diversity for 500 million birds migrating twice annually. This is for ornithologists, environmentalists, science geeks, and nature lovers. And learn why trees planted by JNF Kakal is counterproductive and how ASPN is fighting to get the right trees in the right places. So there's more to that, but that's at the heart of it. The next is something that is we operate a field school down in Eilat, and there are many things that you may have heard from prior speakers around the water that surrounds and is part of Israel. And so, coined it the Med, the Red, and the Dead Sea Marine Biology Tours. Nearly half of Israel's land is underwater. From coral reef to shark reefs, kayak on the Dead Sea, learn what is happening and need to reverse the evaporating Dead Sea and impact of sinkholes. It's for water lovers, environmentalists, outdoor enthusiasts, and experience firsthand how Israel protects aquaculture, manages pollution, and witness the impact oil spills have had on all animal life and why we vigilantly and effectively fight any all oil pipeline initiatives. So it's a whole element dedicated to the water. And then Climate Change and Innovation Research Tour. There's so much in Israel to celebrate and appreciate and learn learn how Israel is leading the world in critical climate change technology. As I mentioned, the Ashalim Solar Power Station, if you've not been there, it's our intent to build a custom tour of that site. Commitments that have been set up is Ashalim is working to generate 30% of Israel's energy by 2030, and this is going to be a big education and opportunity to disseminate what we're learning and achieving around the world. Visit one of 5 advanced desalination plants throughout the country, making Israel one of the top 5 leading countries in the world. And water, as we all know, is becoming one of the most precious, if not the most precious resource. There are 5, Palmachim, and I believe Ashkelon, and 3 others I can't remember off the top of my head. This is for scientists, pro-natural energy advocates. Also, if you're not familiar, drip irrigation started in Israel. Simcha Blas and his son developed the first experimental system for modern drip irrigation in 1959 and created Datafim, the first drip irrigation company in 1965. These are just a taste. We're going to be exploring and putting together tours of really celebrating the ingenuity, innovativeness, and success of these elements that are really preserving and protecting nature, but also helping fight climate change. So really the final thoughts here are: share our purpose with your friends and social network. Happy to share this deck if anybody's interested. We urge you to join our email newsletter. We imagine most of you have, but if you haven't, please go to natureisrael.org and you can find the drop downs to join our newsletter, join our Facebook page, be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you, and come travel with us to Israel. And if you are interested in getting involved in this wonderful organization that really does amazing good every day, we'd like to hear from you. Please reach out to myself or to Rebecca Smith, the nominating chair. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Jonathan. A wide-ranging, fascinating talk. And there were lots of questions, mostly in the chat feature, but I have to admit my internet went out for several minutes there in the middle. And when I came back in, my chat feature was blank. So I do several questions. There's more to me than to you, actually. But one thing I want to say, people asked about it, but I want to point out that we're running now 2 nature trips a year, one one usually early mid-November, and then one in mid-late March. And those are 5-day trips from a Sunday to a Friday morning. Everybody's welcome. We're currently advertising and offering the one for November this year, November 6th. But if you're going to Israel anyway, if you're going to be in Israel, either with an organized group, and you want us to talk to group leaders about the whole group coming to something, or you're on your own family trip, whatever, have a couple days or even a couple hours if you're in Jerusalem, let us know, and we can arrange for you a bespoke trip. For if you want to see bird banding, you have small kids, that's a great thing to do. Usually needs to be early in the morning. Most days in Jerusalem, not so much in the heat of the summer, but yeah, there are days as well as birding and all kinds of things. Gazelle Valley, of course, is always open, and we can give you some insider looks at those things. And in general, around the country, hiking on the trail and birding sites all over the country. Jonathan mentioned a lot where there's an incredible birding site and a lot of interesting stuff going on. So that in general about nature tours. Jonathan, somebody asked if about Red Rooster, are they volunteering their time or that's a paid gig? I mean, I'll let you handle that question.
Yeah, I mean, they're well priced. I'll just say that, and they're tremendous partners. They're not free; they have to eat, and we understand. And we have a saying also: if things are free, people tend to ascribe a similar value to that. So, what I can say is, for what they're doing, it's not inexpensive, but it's a wonderful value. And I'm not gonna. I don't want them to be inundated with other business to take away from our shine, but they were just hired by Hadassah after we had hired them. So we feel really good that we found a group that is, and you can go to their website to learn more about them and reach out to Lawrence Kimmel or Howard Levy. And but they have been involved with, I think, a few dozen Jewish related organizations, and they're terrific.
Great. Okay, other questions here we have going on about the percentage of funding that comes from big donors or small donors. I don't want to give the numbers off the top of my head. It depends how you define big or small, but typically in NGOs, it's about 80-20 rule where 80% of the fund is coming from 20% of the people. It's probably a good rule of thumb for us as well, but I mean, the small donations are crucial, and the long tail of philanthropy is growing. We're always looking for new supporters. Often, we bring donors up the ladder, and small ones become medium-sized donors, and so we're really every dollar counts.
What I would say, I would echo that. That I think we mirror many other nonprofits in that way. The percentage that you just said is probably right, but the thing that we acknowledged and in the structure is setting up both a development committee, which we would argue is but engaging with high net worth individuals, foundations, corporations, large opportunities, and donor relations, where we're interfacing with those that are new. Obviously, we are looking to attract younger people into the become more familiar and make it a part of who they are and part of their tikkun olam, part of their, what they care about. And so it's working on both sides. There's awareness, there's engagement, there's activities that we want to fulfill them. And then there's those with larger dollars that have already recognized SPNI as a leader in the space and want to support it at a higher level, and can't have one without the other.
Yep. And the continuing question there, Harry Schaefer asks about funding or support from the government of Israel. Yes, in general, SPNI's budget is built. 2/3 of our budget is self-generated from our field schools and our summer camps and our guided hikes and tours, all in Hebrew for Israelis of all ages all over the country every month. And about 20 to 25% every year comes from the Israeli government. Chunk of that, the bulk of that is for education work. We work in all the sectors, environmental education. We're mainstreamed in the schools, formal education, also informal education. But some of it comes from Ministry of Environment per project and various other ministries here and there. We have big promises for work on our field schools from the Ministry of Tourism that have never materialized in the last, they were promised before the series of election campaigns took place 3.5 years ago. We're still waiting for big money. And the rest of our, 10 to 15% we raise through philanthropy, the donors and foundations and businesses in Israel as well. And of that, big chunk, over 1/3 comes from Israel too. So we're very proud of that. And otherwise, most of it comes from North America, and we're no less proud of that. Other questions going on? A lot of thanks. Yes, people who this will be recorded. This has been recorded. It will be online probably tomorrow. There's always a link we send upcoming and recorded webinars. All of our webinars since April 2020 have been recorded and are available to see there online on our site, soon to be at our new site. Amazing presentation, Jonathan. Donated to ASPNI for years. Do we now donate to Nature Israel?
I can answer that.
Yes, please.
Whichever name you prefer. We still are incorporated under ASPNI, but we have a DBA, doing business as. So our bank account recognizes both. So whichever you feel is faster. Nature Israel is faster to write. But thank you.
Right. Informative lecture. Best wishes. I'm just reading some things. Hi from Soho. Yes, great presentation. Is there a contact for the group in Israel? We're your contact, Deborah. Contact me or the info address. My colleagues David Amichai and Barry Sheridan in my office are happy to connect you with what's going on in Israel. Of course, as a Hebrew speaker, there's a lot more going on that we do on a regular basis. And you can support or just be on the mailing list of our regular Hachevra L'Haggadat Teva mails that go out and trips that are offered there. So anyway, thanks very much, everybody.
Susan Hankin has a pretty interesting question.
Yes, I was just getting to that. Go for it.
I think it's an excellent point. One, I think diversity is critical. So yes, we have Lisa Ching, who's both finance chair and treasurer.
The question is about women. You talked about geographical diversity, and there's a question about, is effort being made to include more women on the board?
Yeah, that's what I was answering. Yeah, I'm right on it. I think it's a great one. Yeah, geographic diversity is one, but we have 4 women that are on the board right now. Would love more, absolutely. But we also have, what I like is not geographic, but we also have ethnic background as well. Lisa Ching, Sean Sweeney. These are 2 off the top of my head that are not Jewish, but have fallen in love with Israel and have taken significant time, especially over the last several years, to activate the flywheel of this new operating rhythm. So Rebecca Smith out of LA, she works for HBO, and she's been amazing on our production efforts, and she runs a nominating committee. She's tireless, fearless. And as I mentioned, Danielle Nyman, longstanding board member for, I believe, almost 30 years. And there have been others in the past that have been part of the board. But we're looking for great people. So we're actually speaking with a wonderful lady in Florida right now who's expressed interest. But we're trying to line up a meeting with me, with that person right now. But if you'd like to join Susan, reach out. I'd love to speak with you.
Okay, so I had technical problems here, but I'm looking at some of the former questions. Touring options in Israel this summer. Laura and Margie in August, contact us directly because there's lots of stuff going on. Of course, if you want to take trips in Hebrew, that's one story. But if you want some specific things that we can help you with, let us contact us directly and we'll talk to you personally. Miroslav asks, does Nature Israel and USA support other nature protection societies in USA and activities? And do these support vice versa? I think I understand that question. And I think the answer is no. Nature Israel is about supporting SPNI in Israel specifically. The activities that it does in North America have to do with education and outreach for the work of SPNI. Is that fair, Jonathan?
That is fair. That's why we exist.
Right.
Yes. But that is to say, like we do work with the Sierra Club in a way to get their groups that want to get to Israel. So there are other environmental organizations that we're friendly with. But I think the question was specifically, do we raise funds for other groups other than SPNI? And that would be no.
Right. And apropos of the Sierra Club, there was a question about that. Have we made up? We think we have. There's a Sierra Club, I think this coming spring in March 2023, we have a trip scheduled with Sierra Club on the agenda. I think it'll probably go ahead as planned. And we're hoping to get into the loop with twice a year or even more with them after this next trip. We were hoping to do that after this past trip that was canceled, but that was a fiasco and hopefully behind us and behind them. What else, Jonathan? Are you seeing?
I just want to give a shout out to Henry Spitz. Go Highwaymen. Thank you.
Great.
Tina.
Oh, yes. Dan Pava, our board member, asked a pointed question here. Maybe you can take that. I'd be happy to, Jonathan, which is why should folks,
he's our favorite board member person.
Yeah. Why should folks support ASPNI over or in addition to the JNF, the Arava Institute, etc.?
That's an interesting question, Dan. I think there's a couple of things that the area that SPNI is focused on either speaks to you as part of its core purpose. I think the Arava Institute is doing great things in cross-border coexistence and understanding around nature. They're not the NGO that's the watchdog for nature in Israel. I know them. I've been to Keturah. I've done the Israel ride with them. And they're a terrific organization. I think if specific elements of what they're doing is different, I think we should position slightly different. Absolutely give. Our job right now is to tell everyone the story of what SPNI is doing and what makes them special and what makes their causes really, really paramount. And I think we're doing that right now with Nature Israel, specifically around Startup Nature, and the initiatives that we're doing to rewild and offset carbon as a critical element. I know, Jay, you had mentioned, I know we may be running out of time, but in the recent Time magazine, correct me if I'm wrong, there was an article that said roughly 2/3 of the solutions that are going to come to fight climate change are nature-based. Am I right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that's, if I just follow up for a second, I'd say, yeah, there are a lot of other organizations that do great work, including some of the stuff that JNF does in Israel, but not so much their environmental work. And, you know, Iris had an article, our CEO had an article in the last print newsletter we had. I think we posted it online as well, or we sent it out to you guys, called Everybody Talks About Climate Change, Nobody Talks About Nature, or Few Talk About Nature, which is like a pun on an Israeli song. Everybody talks about peace, nobody talks about justice. But it's true. There's nature-based solutions is the first best bottom line thing we have to do to combat climate change. And those nature-based solutions and nature protection in general, biodiversity loss in general, nobody else in Israel is really doing it. The only other ones that are really doing it is the Nature and Parks Authority, but you know they need a watchdog, as you pointed out, big time. They need a watchdog. Kakal is not doing it. JNF in Israel is not doing it. They say they might be doing it, but they're not doing it. We're doing it. So that's a good reason to support us. Yeah,
and there's one example, Lou. I believe it was another Times of Israel article that did a feature about Startup Nature. They had visited the Kfar Rapid and had a full understanding of what was going on and started talking about the relationship that SPNI is having with Terra in identifying carbon offsets and measuring that carbon offset. And we received an outreach from a representative of the Commonwealth of Virginia to explore how we can work in partnership. So again, it's an active solution-based situation that we're sharing what we're doing with others, not just in Israel, but for coexistence. And I think that's, there are many other ways you can give or get involved in fighting the biggest threat that we have to our planet. We believe that we're doing one of them that are pretty critical. That's pretty critical.
Absolutely. The species loss is just, it's going to kill us. We're in a spiral. And the most exciting thing we're doing, and we can end with this, Jonathan, I'll give you last word, but we're in the last minute. We are rewilding. We are restoring Israel's historic wetland habitats, 95% of which have been dried up, pumped out, overused, or had fish ponds built on them. And we are turning a lot of those fish ponds into wetland nature reserves for biodiversity flourishing and for people, and to make nature more accessible to people for generations to come. I think it's one of the most exciting projects in the Middle East right now, environmentally at least. And it's right here. You can hear more about it here as well. And come see it at Kfar Rupin and Magan Michael next time you're in Israel. Be in touch. Jonathan, any final words? I want to thank you very, very much for a really, really interesting presentation. Really provoked a lot of thought. Appreciate the work, and it's been really, really fun working with you. You know, and for many more years to come.
Thank you, L'chaim. Yes, it's a labor of love. You know, it's a lot of work. Sometimes I hear from my wife, say, are you running the company still? It really is. It's my joy, and I think it's something that Leon has given me something now that I was not a big giver of my time. So I put my whole heart and soul into this, and I'm grateful to everyone on the board today for those that preserved the organization, that kept it going, that kept improving it, and allowed me to come in and trusted me to make the changes that I thought that were operationally were needed in order for the right message, our message, to get out effectively. So I think we're getting there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Inshallah, may all of our societies find consensus in the next coming weeks and months somehow.
Well, I look forward to seeing everyone who's joining the November trip. I'll be there on that trip. So I'm opening an invitation to everyone who reach out to Robin Gordon. And if you don't know the information, it's on the website, or call her to get the itinerary, and look forward to seeing you then, or in March, or in one of the new Nature Israel environmental tours. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Thank you very much, Deborah. I'm in Tel Aviv. I also work in the Tel Aviv headquarters. And reach out to Jonathan too. I don't know if he mentioned it, but he's findable on Google is
pretty easy, or just Jonathan at natureisrael.org. Jonathan at natureisrael.org.
There you go. Deborah, be in touch. I'm at jays at spni.org.il. Looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you all. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good week, everyone. Stay cool. Bye-bye. Thank you, David. Thank you, David Amichai in the back office.